Welcome, everybody. You're watching Wake Up with Webb. I'm your host. And again, this is for those individuals who make a conscious choice to think, conscious choice to research, conscious choice to have the freedom to listen to different views, to research those views out, and really to have a conscious awareness of what's going on in this world today. And something that's going on in this world that touches my heart greatly is the impact that we've seen over the last year with a lot of stuff, but primarily what I'm talking about, obviously, is the isolation that's taken place due to a pandemic. But there's a whole lot more garbage that we can talk about politically. I'm not going to get into this on this particular interview, but I've got Ana-MariaTemple here. Dr. Temple has been a guest in the past and just full of knowledge, full of research, and her passion is working with kids. And that's where her heart is, and she's got a tremendous background. She's written a book we talked about last time, The Rule of Five. So I'll make certain we bring that up for you. If you're a parent, you'll definitely want this book. But I want to dive in to talk about your kids and adolescents, and really just kids, all of them. I consider, kids these days, 21, but we're going to talk about younger kids, 18 and under anyway, and even smaller than that. But what impact is going on? And I want to come up with some opportunities and options. Dr. Temple is going to share with you, what can you do about it? It's one thing to get information, but we want to share actual actionable items to you. So Dr. Ana-MariaTemple, thank you so much for being here. I really do appreciate you so much for taking time. I know you're busy. We just barely started diving into this. So why don't you just real briefly for those who don't know you, share your background a little bit, your passion, and then we're going to dive into what you've seen over the last several months, what's happening to children.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here. This is also a topic near and dear to my heart. I feel like I'm talking about it all the time and no one's listening. And sometimes I feel like I'm beating my head against the wall and still nothing's happening. So, well, I'm a holistic pediatrician, and the reason children are my passion, turns out that when I did a little retrospective look, it actually started, when I was 5 years old. At that time, we were living in communist Romania, and my sister was suffering from really horrible stomach pains. And I remember my mom sitting on the floor crying with her because she couldn't make her belly better. And we went to all these doctor visits and stuff. Anyway, her diagnosis came to be celiac disease, which is a gluten intolerance and really bad allergy. And in communist Romania in 1975, going gluten-free was not easy. We didn't even barely have food, much less like, let's have gluten-free flour. So as you could possibly imagine or not imagine, my mom's, did these great efforts through the black market to get food for my sister so she could tolerate it. And the story went on. And basically, I remember looking at my dolls and thinking, I'm going to be a kid's doctor. And it's never been another kind of doctor. It's never been another job. It's always been a kid's doctor. And my passion has always been prevention of disease. I love treating, and I treat a lot of chronic disease, but where my heart lies is prevention. Because what if children never have to have pain? What if children never got sick? What would that world look like? And now in 2021, 1 in 3 of our children suffers from a chronic disease. And the next 7 years, according to the WHO, we're going to have 100% of our children suffer from chronic disease. And I was trained as a traditional doctor, but all 3 of my children had chronic disease: asthma, eczema, allergies, ear infections, croup, constipation, ADHD, seasonal allergies. You name a drug, we had it in my house. And I gave it to my children. And I didn't know any better until I understood the power of food. And then I became a warrior mom, and nothing stood in my way. And I changed my children's food. I didn't know anything about supplements and gut health, anything. I just changed their food, got rid of garbage, gave them fruits and vegetables. And over the past 12 years, my children have thrived. They've stopped taking medications. We moved to New Zealand for a 1.5 years with no meds, no doctors, no health insurance. And my family thrived. And so when I came back to the States, I started my practice differently and trying to do and working at doing prevention old school. Everyone is like, this is so old school. Like, we talk about food, vegetables, poop, must poop every single day, sleep, fresh air. And we go down to the basics, because if we don't focus on the basics, there is no supplement that will outdo a
Yeah.
horrible diet or a terrible lifestyle.
You mentioned something I'm going to come back to when you said 1 in 3 have a chronic disease. I was reading some research on that the other day, and I was actually there's actually a lawsuit against these pharmaceutical companies for vaccination. And the research that they're bringing, the deposition, all this information shows the percentages of individuals as they go through adulthood that have not been vaccinated, how many chronic diseases they get compared to those who've been vaccinated. I know this isn't the topic we're talking about, but those who've been vaccinated, it goes off the chart of chronic diseases. And the only reason I bring that up, how does the WHO know and accept that, okay, 1 in 3 children now have a chronic disease? Acceptable or not acceptable? If it's not acceptable, then we should be able to look into the future with science today. I mean, come on. And say in the future, only 1 in 5. What they said, however, 1 in 100 will, right?
No,
Or I mean,
100%.
100% will.
100%.
So yeah, 1 in 1. So 100%. So what they're saying is we already know that every child is going to have a chronic disease. Well, how do you know that? What's going on that we don't know? Why is that okay? Instead of saying, nope, in the future, it's not going to be 1 in 3. It's unacceptable. I'm not hearing that at all. And people, again, this is a conscious place to think. You got to wake up. What's going on? Why are our children getting sicker and sicker and sicker? Yet the amount of money going toward research and medical treatments keeps going up, 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 up. So anyway, with that said, let's dive into the main topic here. What are you seeing with the health of children, especially the mental health, since we've had isolation?
Since March of 2020, the first thing that I said, I was like, I know we're focusing on the masks and we're focusing on washing hands, which, by the way, I always applaud washing hands. Thank goodness we can wash hands now. But we focus on the masks and plexiglass. And I was like, no one is talking about what this isolation that is coming is going to do to our children for almost a year. And I keep saying the same thing. I was like, this virus is a virus. It is affecting some people very severely, mostly elderly adults and people with chronic issues. The children are overall doing great. There are some issues, so we're not making light of the fact that some children do end up really sick, but if we look at it as a percentage, they're not. That when it comes to, if you compare children with flu versus children with COVID, children with flu do far worse than children with COVID.
That's right.
But what we're not focusing on, what is this long term? Our children have developing brains. And I know that we're trying the best, that we're doing whatever we're doing, but the developing brains are so susceptible. Heavy metals, social isolation, sugar, garbage in food, lack of sleep, too much stress. And then we act like, oh, it's no big deal, this will pass. Yet in March 2020, I was like, yeah, okay, 6 weeks, this will pass. A year later, it's not passing. This is it. This is the thing and how do we navigate it? Because everyone is like, oh, the amount of time I get, this is just a phase. I'm like, right, okay. It was a phase in March. This is not a phase. And we know that social isolation in children and in adults is the number 1 risk factor, number 1 toxin for anxiety, depression, and suicide risk. That has been established way before COVID. And that has now become a reality for a majority of the people. What I'm seeing in clinic is the children who are socially isolated are doing far worse than the children that are allowed to be in the world. And I'm even including the kids that are allowed to go back in-person school versus kids that are on Zoom school. And that's a current battle in my house right now as we speak. And there's a distinct difference. And we don't even need to look at data and numbers, because I've been at school board meetings and I got blasted for why you're bringing data. You can just change statistics. And I was like, all I can tell you, clinically speaking, I can tell by the person sitting in front of me if they're going to in-person school or if they're on Zoom school. Having said that, there are some kids that are doing Zoom school and thriving and doing great. That is just not the majority of them. And the kids that are doing Zoom school and thriving have a lot of other social interactions with their friends that the parents are making a huge effort with. So, and it's not just the children, the parents are stressed, which if the parent is stressed, the child is stressed. We are one grouping. It's not one human exists individually. We all feed off each other, and we all need to work together in order to thrive in this environment. And we're not. All I'm seeing is worsening symptoms of anxiety and depression.
Yeah. It's interesting that you were pushed back a little bit by having statistics. Can they be manipulated? They are being manipulated. We know that when the COVID test began, they were doing 40 to 70 cycles, which is the more cycles you do, if you're not familiar with this, the higher probability you're going to pick up a COVID, which could be the common cold. And that's why the testing have been shown to be 85% false positives. Well, now they're taking that rate down to 7 cycles. So now you're not going to see very many people have it, which will make it look like something's working, whether the mask or the vaccines. Well, they took the cycles down is what they did. But if statistics aren't important, why are we using them to put masks on, right? So, but what is interesting, what you just said is also the truth. Let's look at what's happening in the world. Let's look clinically what's happening. The average age of death in the United States has been 78 for some time now. The average age of death last year in 2020, wait for it, 78. So we didn't see people dying from COVID younger than that. That was the average age. And so if we look at clinically, or we look in the world, children aren't, for the most part, they're not dying. And we know, and again, statistics show, if you can go into the CDC even, which you might think could manipulate them, and I do, but they'll even show that the flu is probably a minimum. I don't want to say numbers, much, much worse for children than COVID. So here we have number one. What's the number one cause of death for adolescents?
Car accidents.
Car wrecks. What's the number 2?
Suicide.
Suicide. Where's COVID?
It's way down on the list. It's not
way
even
down.
making a
So
list. It's not
we're
even making a
creating
list.
isolation in a group of young people that have less chance of having severe reactions than with the flu. And we've never done anything about the flu. If you're sick, stay home, throw up, have a fever, go back to school. And that's just kind of what's happened. Yet here we're creating more anxiety, more stress, which leads to more suicide. I don't know if you've seen this. I know you've seen more of the symptoms and so forth. I don't know if you've seen the actual suicide, but we know this is what's going on. And if this is going on, what are you supposed to do about it? As a parent, what am I supposed to do? I've got a child, 16, Landon. He's an only child. He doesn't have siblings to play with in the house. And, he only wants to spend so much time with mom and dad. And so help us out. So, excuse me, one of the things that we've allowed is actually a little bit more time on his game. He doesn't do social media at all, period. None, nada. He didn't want to, we wouldn't let him. But we didn't have to not let him. He just, that's not him, thank God. But he likes to get on his games. And that way he can be with his friends and play the games. And we don't know the best way to handle this. Some of his friends, they can get together. He does run track and cross country. They get together every day, and he's in school. So he's got that going on for him. And he's pretty stable kid. But what do you do if you're in the situation where your kids are at school and maybe not in sports? How do you handle this?
Well, I'll tell you a scary story that happened in my house. So my house, my children So one in college is on Zoom college, but she lives in an apartment on the campus. So she's doing socially just fine because apparently there's no COVID in college. So they're doing great. But then I have a senior and then an 8th grade. And last week we did a phone check of the screen time check for the 8th grader, and he had clocked in 46 hours of screen time. And now that's a full-time job.
Whoa.
Full-time job. I am an integrative pediatrician, right? And this is why I talk about it all the time. And it happens the moment that you take your eyes off the children, because, he's 14. He was more, out of my 3 children, he was born, obviously the youngest. So he was born with more electronic presence than his siblings. And when you have older siblings, then you gravitate towards what they're doing. So his brain is absolutely developed differently than his older siblings. So he's more addicted to the screens. And if you've seen Social Dilemma, this makes total sense.
We did.
And then what happens is that then he got put into Zoom school, and he's actually a really smart kid, even though he pretends he's not, but he's a really smart kid. And so he was on Zoom school and he wasn't even paying attention. All he was doing was playing Minecraft in school, because he would get his homework done in 10 seconds, be Minecraft. So 8 hours a day, I couldn't control him because of the school. So we pulled him out of school and put him in a virtual learning platform that has been doing it for 25 years. He gets his school done in 2 hours. And then he's supposed to get a part-time job, which he babysits around town. He has a Fitbit. He's supposed to get 10,000 steps and all this stuff. Well, having written the book, I have to make sure that I sell the book. And then we're writing a second book, and we're launching an online eczema course. And I have a clinic, and my husband is, doing all these other things as well. And, you have a house, and I'm going to give you like a gazillion excuses. There are just no excuse. This is the only excuse. It's a parenting fail on my part, that we took our eyes off what he was doing. I have to walk around and grab the phone and put it in my pocket. At nighttime, I do rounds upstairs. I take phones, I take laptops out of all, the kids' rooms, because you shouldn't have any electronics when you're sleeping. And sometimes I thought I did, but one got me distracted with a question. And the nights that I didn't, he would have his laptop and watch Iron Man till 2:00. He would watch endless videos, because you can also track and see what they're watching. He's not watching inappropriate stuff. It's just mindless, continuous 18 hours of YouTube. And when I sat in to had a chat with him about it, he's like, I'm just so bored. There's just nothing to do. I hang out with my friend for a couple of times. I take the dog for a walk for a second around, and it's just nothing else to do. And, it has to be my husband. When he's home, he takes him to go grocery shopping at Costco. If I'm home, we have to play games. We have No Tech Tuesday, which fell off the wagon because we moved into a new house. I have to, on the days I'm not at work, I have to continuously monitor, and it's exhausting. And when you're already, for my parents that are already working from home, and you're trying to get that going, and you're also trying to cook fresh food, and then you're trying to pay the bills, and now you got to monitor the social screen time, it is exhausting. So I just want people to know that this is reality that happens in a lot of people's households, including mine, which that does a parent reset. It doesn't make me a bad parent. It just brings the light that made a mistake, didn't see that coming, and now we have to reorganize and reevaluate what we're doing, because I cannot allow that to continue for this child's brain. I will affect his future and his future outcome if I don't pay attention to what has just happened in my house.
Did you just say that you've written another book?
We're writing another book. Yeah, writing another book.
So before I get to that,
Yeah.
In the first book, hold that up to our screen right behind you. Okay, the rule of 5, guys. This is, just explain it just a little bit. And I'm just wondering, is this a good starting place to they're at home? Is this a good starting place to help with the psyche as well? The mental challenges. Is there some help in that book for my child?
So yes. So in the rule of 5, I break it down into simple, easy steps, actionable steps that you can do right away, every day, and starting small. So example, 46 hours screen time is massive. It's like Mount Everest. How are you going to contain that? Because you can go, I'm just going to take everything away. Really? Because they have school. And then if he needs directions, if he needs to contact his babysitting job, it's all back to the screens. So can be overwhelming. And I was like, well, then you just do one tiny step. And then knowing, so for example, and then there's the 46 hours of screen time, great. Well, the 10,000 steps wasn't enough. He needs 14,000 steps. I fell off the wagon with No Tech Tuesday. Now we do No Tech Tuesday. So when I come home at 6 o'clock, everyone's phones and electronics are away, and we cook together and we play games together until we go to bed at night. And you may say, well, that's not a big
thing. By the way, how's it work? The game,
kids,
No Tech Tuesday, how's it working?
When I come home and I put my bags down, and I have a 17 and a 14-year-old, and I was like, who wants to play chess, as an example? They both stop what they're doing. They come over and we sit and cackle. I don't have to remind them to put their phones down. Their quality time is so important. And when, my husband really hates Monopoly, they brought down the Monopoly game, and he was huffing and puffing, and we're like, you need good attitude, because this is not about you. This is about the children. And then when we sit down, you don't have to remind anybody to put their phones away, because they're so engaged. They're so happy to have one-on-one, non-distracted parents be in their zone. So it's working amazing when I do, but I'm in charge of doing it. I have to do it. And if I don't do it, it doesn't get done.
Yeah. And the reason I ask, my wife will tell you this, I'm not a game guy, but I'll tell you, I'm probably like your husband. I'll tell you, once we get doing a certain game or whatever, I do enjoy it. And I see other people enjoying it. And my wife, she's a game person. Landon's kind of like me, but probably not because of what he's seen, but because he's addicted to the screen stuff. And so I was just curious, once they get into it and dive into it, I imagine that there's more quality that came out of that day than the other days.
Totally. And we go for walks together. It's not even an issue. My children crave my attention and my husband's attention. And, and I'll tell you, this past Tuesday, I was cooking, and the two of them were at it, and they're boys. So they're wrestling and they're loud. I have loud kids. And so they're like beating each other up, just take it in the word for what and it was so loud and annoying. And in my head, I was like, this is why you give kids electronics, because they're so annoying. And, it was so incredible. And I was like, and then the other part of me was like, the beauty of the noise in the house. But I could totally see when they were little and you have 1,000 things going on and it never stops. At least these, when they're 17 and 14, they can grocery shop, they can do dishes, they can help you cooking. When they were 6, 4, and 2, it was so annoying. They're not really doing anything. So you can see how you're like, here's a device so I could just get dinner on the table. So I'm not blaming anybody. I'm just I'm telling you that this is the reality, and I face it every single day. And I was like, no, I have to deal with the chaos. I have to deal with these two fighting in the background while I'm trying to get dinner on the table. And hopefully I won't explode, because they're so annoying.
Yeah. I mean, this is good news. And Mindy, my wife, Mindy, she watches a lot of this. I'm hoping she's watching now, because this is good stuff. And you've got another book coming out. What is that directed to?
That is holistic approaches to eczema. We're going deep. We're going into eczema. 2 of my children suffered from eczema, and they got better. And that's one of my passions in clinic. And we've now have an online course that's been going on for a year with great success. So the obvious next step is to write the book that is based on the course to help more people get more relief from this really very difficult condition.
Yeah. Well, good. Yeah, that's something a lot of parents deal with. And again, all they know is meds, right? Anyway, Mindy just said hi. She's watching. Okay.
Hey, Mindy.
Yeah. So that's a good deal. So anything that, you've given us some real good news here. I don't know. I think everyone understands the seriousness of this. I mean, is there any particular stories? I know you shared your own, and I appreciate you being transparent about your own family, because of course you can't do any wrong. You're the doctor, you're the pediatrician. And so we all, fall apart on this stuff. As parenting's, we don't have a book on parenting, right? We have to figure it out. Maybe that's your next book, right? But there you go. Okay, that's good enough. Okay, that'll be a starting point. So it is a general book on parenting then.
It is. Totally.
Okay, good. Okay, all right. So again, bring it to the screen one more time so we're going to see it, and then we can wrap up. But the Rule of 5, Dr. Ana-MariaTemple. Guys, it really is a good book. I've got it on my desk. I've been going through that. I need to get it home to Mindy because I want her to go through it. But this is a serious situation we're dealing with our kids, and our children need help. They're crying out inside themselves, but they don't know how to emotionally respond to that because kids have been indoctrinated by the screen. They've been indoctrinated by a whole different type of education. And what you experience, and I've experienced it too, when we just, even though our kids sometimes might be pushed back, I don't want to go for a walk. I don't want to play a game. I want to go, be hypnotized in front of the screen. I want to go zombie out. When we actually get them in these activities, there's laughs, there's smiles. They turn into children again, basically. But we're all guilty of getting busy. And what would you leave us with on this to
I think one of the misconceptions is that children know how to play. They don't know how to play. That is a learned behavior. So if when I was little, the only thing on TV was like the Smurfs, and then after that was paid programming. So there was like nothing to watch. So we were always outside. And that was how we played. And these days, the number one comment I get, well, kids don't want to hang out. They don't want to go outside. It's too cold outside. It's too rainy. It's too windy. When I was little, it was like, put a coat on, put your hat on, and you're going outside. There was nothing else to do. You just went. You didn't have all these excuses. But the reason we have all these excuses, us parents, I'm sorry, but we are at the root cause of this. And I'm part of the problem too.
We are.
I'm not pointing fingers. Right here is part of the problem. But because we're afraid of the weather, we don't want to play in the rain.
You know
we
what?
Don't want to play when it's
You're
cold.
100% right on. You're 100% right on. And when I grew up, I liked the weather. I grew up in the Midwest in Kansas City, and there's no way I was going to stay in the house. Well, there's a tornado outside, kids. We'll be fine, Mom. We didn't want to be in the house. It was stuffy. It wasn't real. It wasn't, you didn't feel the weather in the house. And so nowadays you're 100% right. I like the weather, so it's a little easier for me. Landon, he's really good with it when he's in track, when he's with his friends. There isn't any complaining. There's no moaning. There's no whining. He just goes and runs. It doesn't matter if there's a hurricane. But if it's, let's go take Lola for a walk, it's cold. Just, but how do you as a parent, when your child says, I don't know, it's cold, how do you respond? How do you get, people always say this, well, you're supposed to discipline your children. Well, you are, but discipline's not the use biblically. In Hebrew, that when God commented about discipline your children, the Hebrew word for that was to train. You're to train your children. That's an ongoing process. Discipline has this context of thinking, you did bad, you're disciplined. So we train our children all the time, and there's consequences when they don't do right, and that's called, what's the disciplinary action? But how do you train your children to accept, we're going for a walk, we're playing Monopoly? How do you do that?
Well, you know what? When they were really little, this has been an issue I've had since raising them. And as actually this tip is in the book, is for every minute that you spend outside is the minute that you get on screen
time.
So if you don't go outside, your choice, you choose, then you don't get any screen time, 0 for 0. So therefore you're a yes parent. Now the child gets to make a choice. They are in charge of their destiny, if you will. And so if my kids would go outside and they would be at the door, like, how many minutes is that? And especially on like really cold days, because they were freezing, and they were like, but how much longer? And sometimes I would reward with a hot chocolate. And then so I had all these things. They still bring it up to this day. Remember when
life was so bad,
so difficult, we had to play for 30 minutes to get hot chocolate, and we have to play 30 minutes to get 30 minutes of screen time. But the screens are easy. Apps are easy. The screens does it for you. YouTube, or Netflix, you sit there and you pause for 3 seconds. It moves to the next video without you even thinking. To play outside, you got to find the stick. You got to find the friend, but the friend is on their Xbox.
You got to think.
You got to think. You got to come up with a plan.
You got to be conscious.
yeah, when you look outside, the colors are boring compared to an iPad coloring. So there's so many reasons why children are going to gravitate towards that. So since it is the number one thing that they all choose to do, I use that as the reward, because all in life, grades are rewards, our bonuses at work are rewards, our salary is a reward. So we are very reward driven, and there's nothing wrong with doing like do this and then you have some screen time. You do have to take the hardest part as a parent is to take the devices, because then the complaining begins. But you're stronger than they are, and we're doing this for their good. So if they were going to smoke weed, you would take the weed. If they're drinking alcohol, you're going to take the alcohol.
Perfect example.
But the screens that are so
Doesn't seem like an
addictive, we're like,
addiction.
that's okay.
Yeah.
Melt that brain, no
Although
problem.
it's probably one of the most brutal addictions compared to some of those others. Wow. Never saw it that way.
Sugar and screens are pervasive. They are legalized. They're allowed in our children's lives from the moment they're born, and they have the detrimental consequences, and no one is putting stops on them. No one is sitting, not no one, but we're not emphasizing, the word I'm going to say, we're not emphasizing the detriment that this is, because here's the other thing. For the children to have less screen time, it means the parents have to have less screen time.
That's right. Maybe we should start a movement.
Got to start the movement.
All right.
Yeah.
Ana-Maria, thank you so much for being here again. I don't know what you just wrote.
She's saying check your phone. I guess she's sending you
questions, etc.
Oh, I guess I'm sorry. There's a few questions. I think that
got a good audience right now.
Hold on.
Yeah, here's that stream. Dr. Gregory Fryer. There's only 1,364 positive flu cases in the U.S. since September 2020. Interesting. Usually when there's, I don't know, 50,000, I guess COVID was the cure to the flu. So that went bye-bye. Danielle, it's so exhausting and sometimes overwhelming as a parent. Yep. Mindy said, no, my husband doesn't like games. So I was telling you the truth. Routine is so important, so hard. But we have to create routines. We have to train ourselves, or we can't train our children. But to love your child is to train your child. To love your child is to discipline. To love your child is to be able to say, maybe I'm not your friend now. I'm your parent. And there's a day that will come where I'll be your friend too. But it's challenging. It's hard to do that, but it's the most loving thing we can do. And thank you for being human. Thank you for being vulnerable and helping all of us, mothers and fathers, that we all have these challenges that we have to partake in. And perhaps it might be good to team up with another parent or something and say, hey, what are you doing? And follow up, moms or maybe, or I just know you guys probably do a better job of that. How are you guys doing this week with it? Here's how we're doing. And, just following up and getting other people on your team, I think could be helpful.
Well, the thing that we've, forever we said it takes a village to raise a child.
There you go.
And now we've isolated everyone from that village. So now everyone is by themselves. I have Google, therefore I can do it. I have my Zoom, therefore we have lost the village. So now that we're losing the village, our children are suffering because we need help from everybody. As a physician, I don't know everything there's about ADHD or even eczema or whatever. That would be just foolish for me to say that. I learn from my community. I learn from my tribe.
Village.
And if we don't depend on our tribe and figure out how everybody is, but that's human connection. And what this pandemic has taught us, no, isolate, stay by yourself. You're in your own little pod.
I know we're running over, but that's okay.
Sorry.
We're still getting some questions. No, we're still getting questions.
So,
if you can hang for a second.
I can go all day. So
yeah, no, hang on. You just said something. I met a couple when I was in Costa Rica, and they chose to start spending their life on this island. It's native. It's completely native. They had to learn the language and everything. And he said, these children that they'll go out to the beach and the parents are just like, they're taking some time off from their work and they're just laying around being at peace. Their kids are who knows where. And they trust the older kids to take care of the younger kids. There was no Oh, where's Timmy? Where's, or whatever. They're, parents are just panicking all the time, and they're enabling their children. And here's this village knowing, I know my son, like when I lived in this cul-de-sac, I could be all over the neighborhood on my bike, and my parents never worried. They knew the parents, they knew everyone. One time they might get a call. Hey, Charlie's outside the house. He just fell on his bike. I'll get him over to you guys. He's cool. Just, and we've lost that.
And I think you just said it perfectly. And I do see that a lot in clinic. People now have lost trust even in their children and life outside their walls. They know their child is safe in front of an iPad, but what if their child is on a bike down the road and a car hits them? Which is actually not a common thing, but that is the fear on top of all that, which is another thing I talk about in the book. We have this fear that these bad things are going to happen to the children out there, when in fact the badness is happening under our roof,
Right. Yeah. I read a study. I don't remember the numbers, but it was like when they had the study done, like in the 70s, do you know and trust your neighbors? Oh yeah. Now, when you ask people, do you know your neighbors? No. Do you trust your neighbors? No. And it's a very small percentage of people that do. We got a question here.
How do you create a routine that still creates fun?
How do you create a routine that still creates fun?
Ooh, good one. I am a loud, crazy person. And so when I come in and we're doing game night, I go all out, and I make it their choice. So when we talk about, let's say the No Tech Tuesday, it was like, this is going to be the greatest. I sell my family on eating organic. I sell them on playing games. I sell them on going for a walk. I walk in with enthusiasm, and I act like it is the most fun thing that I'm ever going to do today is hanging out with you. And when I am having the most fun hanging out with you, the kids are like, oh, I'm so important that she's hanging out. Oh, okay. So I shower them with attention. Actually, it's my husband who was like, feels like your attention isn't a million words, but when you give someone your attention, it's so powerful because I bring it all to the table. I'm going to take what's in my head, the person that's not doing well in clinic, the 10,000 emails, the YouTube video I haven't posted, the Instagram thing, comments that I'm going to put it to the side, or I'm going to hire people to do that, because when it's my time to hang out with my kids, I need to clear my mind and be present. If you're present in whatever you're doing, it will be fun. And it's just a simple thing of nothing else is as important as the person in front of me today.
So that was perfect. And to sum it up, what you're saying, it's not the activities, it's your love, it's your heart, it's you being present with them, and it's your attitude. That's what creates the fun. If you guys want to follow, they can follow you on Instagram, correct?
Yeah. Lots of great free tips.
Ana-MariaTemple, what?
It's a Ana-MariaTemple, and you get great posts, but then you also get a look into the behind the scenes of what happens in our household, because I do try to be transparent and show people what real life is like, because it's not just rainbows and unicorns.
I know. Well, you have a beautiful spirit, beautiful heart. You're changing lives, and we were blessed to have you come on again. I'm certain it won't be the last time. So hey, have a wonderful weekend. Hope the weather's warmer where you are than it is here, but
yeah. Oh, that's all right. It's winter. Yeah.
All right, Ana-Marie.
All right. Thank you so much, and stay well.
Appreciate you.
Okay.